stand the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and welcome to the Attleboro School Committee meeting of Monday, January 24th, 2022. This is your reminder that this meeting is being electronically recorded. We're going to start tonight with a spotlight event focused on Attleboro High School and the academics at our flagship institution. For that, I'll turn it over to Superintendent Sawyer to introduce the high school team.
Thank you, Chairman Withers. I'm going to actually turn it over to Ms. Regan.
Thank you, Superintendent Sawyer. So this evening we have Mr. Rooney and Mr. Gorman here with several teachers and students and their families here to share with us all of the work that they've been doing around student-centered learning. So with that, I'll introduce Mr. Rooney and Mr. Gorman. If they could come to the front.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year, and congratulations on either election or re-election. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. We had hoped to be able to tie this presentation into our celebration of Blue Pride Night, but a week or so ago, when we needed to make a decision based on the number of cases that were in the area at that time, we felt that it would be prudent to cancel Blue Pride Night for this year. So, that is something that we're disappointed in, but we're still really excited to be here tonight. We've got some fantastic teachers and student speakers that are going to present to you. Just what I would say is that we are obviously so looking forward to several of the aspects of the new building. But I think one of the things is that it gives us a chance to do school differently based on the tools that are being provided to us with this beautiful building that the city and its residents have provided for us. There has been a shift at the high school probably over the last 7 or 8 years to start doing more relevant learning, more project-based learning. And, being able to move over to the new building with all of the tools and all of the, the bells and whistles, so to speak, is something that we haven't waited for. We have started to implement a lot of those things over the last few years. Our ILT, Instructional Learning Team, has really made a lot of progress. And Mr. Gorman has worked with our department coordinators hand in hand with that team as well. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gorman, who's going to frame the presentation for tonight.
Thanks, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity tonight. The admin team, Bill and I, the teachers, and of course the students welcome this chance to showcase to you what we've been up to. I think we all know that the ongoing pandemic has been a major distraction to the work of all schools. But I'm proud to say tonight that despite all of the COVID-related issues we faced, we are here to show you that educating students continues to be our focus. My hat's off to the staff and students of AHS who show their flexibility, resolve, and dedication to teaching and learning on a daily basis. The teachers and students here tonight are a wonderful microcosm of the teaching and learning that's going on at AHS. So tonight we wanted to spend a few minutes talking to you about our work in creating student-centered learning experiences and what those look like in our classrooms. So in particular, we'll focus on student agency, empowering students through giving them choice, peer collaboration, students working together to solve problems, interdisciplinary learning, getting out of subject matter silos and seeing connections across disciplines, inquiry-based learning, students following their own ideas, not set procedures or scripts. Hands-on learning, working with physical resources to make abstract concepts, more tangible and concrete. And of course, productive struggle, figuring out what to do when things don't go as planned, and having the resolve to not give up. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Miss Katie Keene and her team of students. come up to the front, you guys.
Good evening. My name is Katie Keene, and I'm an English teacher at Attleboro High School. Despite what many people might think, English classrooms are much more than simply Shakespeare and the 5-paragraph essay. They're places where students can explore the complex ways in which we all fit into an ever-changing society, where students can find connections with the past and the present, and where students can identify and utilize their unique voices in incredibly powerful ways. Tonight, 5 of my 109 talented, forward-thinking students are here to share the ways in which English class has helped them more deeply consider the implications of their places in this world. Earlier in the year, my sophomore English class began a unit on community problems and engagement. The culminating assignment was for students to develop possible solutions to their chosen community problems. Students read about the power of working toward community improvement and identified the communities to which they belong. Students then chose one community, researched it, identified a problem within that community, developed solutions to their problems, and designed a project that proposed a solution. Finally, students shared their projects during class, which led to some important conversations about the roles we all play in bettering our communities. It should be noted that the very act of speaking publicly is a skill that bridges the gap between ELA and other important content and life skills. Each student, when approached, shared anxiety over speaking tonight, but they challenged themselves to do so because they understand the inherent value of pushing oneself. They worked hard on these projects, and while it's often difficult to speak publicly, their excitement to do so, I believe, is a testament to the power of engaging academic experiences. As these students share their work with you, we hope you recognize the numerous skills they learned, practiced, and honed in order to develop solutions to the problems these future leaders identified. The first speaker tonight is Percy.
Good evening. My name is Percy. For my project, I chose to look at problems within the neurodivergent community. I had the choice to pick this topic, and I did so because I am part of that community, and I feel as though this community doesn't get enough awareness. While this project was done in my English class, the skills I learned and further improved are useful in other classes. For example, I improved my ability to research and verify that a source is credible. I improved the skill by using a credibility checker that my English teacher, Ms. Keene, gave us. On the checker, we would first find our sources, then grade them based on currency, relevancy, authority, accuracy, and purpose. I can use this in any class, including history and science, to check the credibility of resources.
Hello, my name is River and I am in the 10th grade. My project focused on ideas related to pollution on both the local and state level. I liked this project and found it engaging because it's a topic that we talk about and it allowed me to investigate in more depth. I learned some valuable research skills and was able to combine research and problem solving, which is something I found interesting and applicable to other classes and areas of my life. I also liked the interdisciplinary nature of the project. It was cool to see the crossover between English, social studies, and science, and how knowing all the 3 fields is necessary for effective problem solving.
Hi, my name is Presley. I'm a sophomore, and recently in my English class, we worked on a project on community. I chose to research sexism towards teens in the United States. I chose this topic because it affects me and my peers. During this project, I improved many skills. I learned how to find credible sources. I also learned how to present in an understandable way. In doing this, I learned how to identify solutions and find good evidence to support it, and come up with reliable solutions. This helped me become part of the solution.
Hello, my name is Avery. For my research project, I took on the topic of bullying, and believe it or not, I learned a lot of statistical information through my studies. I never thought I'd be thinking about math and English, but using data is important when identifying solutions to problems. I also didn't mind thinking about math and English because this topic is important and relevant to me. This project has actually given my class several different skills and knowledge on multiple topics. A skill I learned from this was finding a reliable source online to help better my research. Another skill it gave me was patience and empathy. This project challenged me to look at the problems from multiple perspectives, not just one point of view. Yes, perspective taking and point of view is a skill I'll need for ELA and CAS, but more importantly, I learned how this transfers to real life, something I also realized I can apply to standardized testing is the idea of having the patience to try to approach a problem on a test from a different angle.
Hello everyone, my name is Fiona and I'm a sophomore. My topic was about after school and extracurricular activities. I noticed that some of these activities didn't have many people in them and that was affecting them badly. We want as many people to be a part of these activities because they make a sense of belonging in the school community. I learned many things from this project. While doing my project, I learned just how much COVID impacted everything, but I also learned how to find reliable information and how to use it to make a better argument. I also learned how to find reliable information and how to use it. Sorry.
Okay.
Takeaway I have from this project is that even students can help identify problems, and even if nothing is solved right away, it's a step in the right direction to start the process of solving these problems.
Thank you, guys. While this project required students to engage in crucial ELA skills, it also tasked students with utilizing skills from other content areas. Students use science to create hypotheses. They access math skills by locating and analyzing data and statistics. They reviewed historical precedents and background information to gain a deeper understanding of the roots of their problems. Most importantly, students created projects about topics that are important to them, not because there was a grade assigned at the end, but because they understood the power of working toward community improvement. They recognized that the skills developed here will help them beyond the halls of AHS, which as a graduate of AHS, I can attest to personally. When people think about ELA, they often think of only words on a page. While these are certainly significant, these students have come to recognize that their voices are just as important in changing the world in powerful ways. Students chose projects that they were passionate about and then used their voices to affect change. That, I believe, is the most important thing that can happen in any classroom. Now I would like to introduce Michael Johnson and his freshman physics students.
All right.
We're going to bring up some models to share with you guys.
Here, can I move this here? Can you want two of you boys take this?
And we'll put that one right in front of
I'm
us.
sorry.
Sit down.
Yes, let's see. This one's the tricky one.
Yeah.
Put it over here. Would you like to go here or there?
Why don't you put it right in
Over
front
there?
of the two
Awesome.
students?
All right. A little bit.
You guys can just go right
Excuse that.
No problem.
Here we go. Here, you can take a marble. And one of you boys. All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Johnson. I am a freshman physics teacher here at the high school, and I have here with me three of my wonderful freshman students. The three musketeers I got with me here are Jacob and Aaron and Ben. Now, what you see in front of you here might look a little interesting, but that's for a good reason. This project that we did is called the roller coaster project. These are what you see, they're roller coasters based on just paper and tape. These students were limited on these two items. They could cut them, they could fold them, they could bend them, they could do whatever they wanted to them. But the entire purpose of this is to, in a hands-on way, best demonstrate conservation of energy. So conservation of energy is it's a concept that might be a little confusing to students when they're just reading it in a textbook, or just reading it in notes, or listening to me talk to them about it, or watching a video. The purpose of physics in this high school, what we're really trying to push with this program, is that hands-on learning that Mr. Gorman was telling you about, the introduction here. And being a physics teacher, and with this course, I feel like I have an obligation and an opportunity to really push that hands-on learning, because with these physics topics, we can apply them very directly to real life in ways that maybe you can't quite as easily in, say a biology or a chemistry class with, all the microscopic and intense chemicals and all of that we have to use in those classes. With physics, everything, this everyday life, there is something that you can do with very little materials that very well demonstrates these concepts. And so these students here were designing these coasters, and through the engineering design process, they had to go through trial and error to figure out the best possible way to make a marble, which I gave these two students, a little marble, go from the top, through a loop, through a spiral, to the bottom successfully. And they had to investigate whether energy was perfectly conserved in this experiment or not, and why. So I will hand this off here to the students here. Start off with Aaron.
Hey there, everybody. Before we start presenting this, I'd like to say thank you on behalf of my group for having us here. I really appreciate this opportunity. So now, without further ado, let's present what you all came here to see. So we first started working on this roller coaster when we were finishing up our work and energy unit, where we learn about things like watts, joule, other types of science mumbo jumbo like that. And to be perfectly honest with you, I just couldn't really grasp the subject that well until we started working on this. You see, while working on this, all these concepts we were learning about, like potential, kinetic energy, the momentum required to go through all these obstacles, all of that I could see right in front of my eyes, right? Like, I could see why it does it, how it works, right? I could understand it better than, in my opinion, if we did it on a piece of paper. Not only that, but it helped to see, pardon the pun, things play in motion. And not only that, but being able to work with my peers, my classmates, it helped me, it turned this more than just a learning experience, but to a fun one.
Hi, thank you school committee for having us. I'm just going to tail off of what Aaron said. Oh, there's the marble going off. Sorry about that. Kind of jumped the gun there. One of the projects we did obviously was the roller coaster here, and we had some set rules as previously stated by Mr. Johnson. You had to have a set amount of paper, tape, and time in order to make it. We had some problems through our process. We had problems with the walls of the roller coaster. The marble kept falling off. We had problems with the structure itself. You know, sometimes the towers holding up the track itself would sometimes collapse. But through a series of trial and error, we ended up, fixing these problems and making it as best as we could. I'm just going to hand it off to Ben here.
So, as Aaron had also said, and as you kind of saw if you did see it, when the marble was going down here, like, it would go down here and then it got caught as it was hitting the loop. So, as you can see with that one, it's a lot taller. And with our trial and error, as Jake had said, we were able to see how the marble could go down a lot better and make it through the loop with the taller start. And by doing that, we were able to be more hands-on, and with some assistance from our amazing teacher, we were able to further understand how and why it wasn't working.
So how about we show them the one that works really well?
Let's just pray this works.
Oh, it will. Right to the bottom. And so both of these structures worked very well when I was testing them over the previous couple of days. In the transport process down here, of course, these are, as the students, had to deal with, this is just paper and tape. And so it's pretty flimsy. It's tough to transport from, the lab upstairs on the second floor down to here successfully without changing the angles and bending them a little bit. But what you're seeing here is, just one of many. At every single unit we have in this course, there's 10 chapters, we have at least 10 inquiry-based labs. So we start every unit with, a brief introduction of what the topic is. We talk about it a little bit as a class, figure out, okay, what do we know about this already? And then we, introduce the inquiry lab. So they enter this lab phase without really knowing too much about the unit yet, just brief introductions. We haven't done tons of in-depth discussions and notes. We haven't done a lot of crazy math yet in the chapter when we first introduced this. And with this, it allows the students to engage the material in a way that they otherwise might not, in a way that, some students connect with hands-on learning much better than they do, just in a traditional lecture and notes-based classroom. And physics is an MCAS class, so there's strict standards and timelines we have to follow. But I think that taking the extra time, this took a couple of days, taking the extra time to do this with our curriculum is valuable for helping these students connect in all sorts of ways, in every, connecting it with in every single way, whether it's, taking it in, listening, hands-on, writing, working with math, all aspects. So this is what we have, and thank you for giving us your space here. We'll get this out of your way here. And we would now like to introduce Tom and his computer science people.
So you'll go right, I'll go left. You zig, I'll zag.
All right, thank you for having us. My name is Tom Burns, and I teach the Computer Science Essentials course at Attleboro High School. So the Computer Science Essentials course is for students 9 through 12. It's an introductory course into computer science, and really the main goal of the course is to have the students focus on fundamentals and basics of programming. But even more than that, we really want to get kids engaged and really light a fire in them about computer science. So we're looking to get them enrolled into the higher level courses that Ms. Faulkner teaches, or even into college. Like I know Jacob's looking into computer science in college, and then springboard them into a career. So in order to light that fire, the class needs to be engaging. The class needs to be something where the students have fun and enjoy going to every day. So in order to do that, it needs to be hands-on. It needs to be an active class. It can't be a passive, just kind of listening class. So we're always doing something in our class. Very rarely are we, lecturing. It's more, trial by fire. The students are really in there, getting gritty with the code. So the project that they will be talking about, there was really 2 guidelines on that project. So one of them was they had to use some of the fundamentals that we started with in the first 5 weeks. So this project was only 6 weeks into the course. And then the second one is they had to create a game that they really enjoyed. And this is going back to what Mr. Gorman was talking about student agency, and really creating something that you like, or creating something that you want to create. It's bringing it outside of the classroom, so you're not just like, oh, this is a chore. I'm in here, I got to do 60 minutes of computer science. I really am looking to turn it into, how am I going to fix this? Going to bed and thinking about, oh, maybe I could do that, and then coming into class the next day with that kind of motivation. And I think these 2 students have shown that, and I'm excited to hear from them. So I'm passing the floor over to Jacob and Evan. So.
I'm Jacob. I'm a senior. So as Mr. Burns said, we were tasked with building a game, and me and Evan chose Pac-Man to do because we thought it would be easy, because everyone that has played Pac-Man knows how easy the game is to play and controls. So when we started working on it, we thought it would be easy. But then when we really started digging into the code, we found out how much more complex it was. Like getting the walls in there, getting the Pac-Man to move at different speeds, getting the ghost to move. This started as an in-school project, but both me and Evan took time out of school to work on it because we were really interested in getting the game to work and providing the information that we had from Mr. Burns.
So the course itself, Computer Science Essentials, was more than just a normal course, because not only did we get to do this amazing project and work on this fun game, but it's more of a hands-on class, as Mr. Burns was saying, that you don't just take notes, you lecture, then you take a test on it. Every single thing is we take little notes at the beginning with the vocab, and then we just go straight into a project. And then we finally get to test what we were learning in the first 5 weeks onto the assignment. It was just really fun and really interacting that we made so many versions of Pac-Man that were just never working every single time. It was just so super infuriating, but we had I think it was 13 versions or something. But we also had Mr. Burns there to help, where he wasn't holding our hand the entire time telling us what to do, but when we needed help, he was there to help us just collaborate, and he was very helpful with us. And it was just overall, it was just really, interesting experience. I learned a lot in it.
Yeah. So, and then as we progressed throughout this course, we started with a game, and the students really got to choose whatever kind of game they wanted to do. And then we kind of moved into like, all right, what can we use these skills for to better something in life, right? So like, how can we make someone's life better with our computer science skills? So I'm kind of putting you on a spot a little bit here, Evan, but your final project was incredible too. So if you could just talk briefly on that, I think it would be pretty enlightening.
For our final project, we were tasked with making an app that would help people. It wasn't just a game. We had to figure out how to help something. Jacob and I, we decided we wanted to make like a reminder app because I'm a very forgetful person. I think he might also be a very forgetful person, but also just a lot of time you forget. When you wake up in the morning, you have reminders that you forget about. And not only that, but there's also like a lot of conditions in the world, like you got dementia, Alzheimer's, things where just people just always forget. So that was also really challenging. We had to use a lot more just math and just like timers, variables, all this stuff that we learned in this class, and it was really hard to do and just do all the math together. It took Jacob and I a long time. But we used a lot of the core things we were learning. It was very hands-on. We were enjoying the entire thing. We were spending time out of class. It was really fun. We learned a lot in the class. I started personally without knowing anything in computer science. I did nothing, basically. I was just on my computer all the time. I didn't know anything. At the end of the class, I learned a lot, and I was doing stuff in my free time because I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, these two are like, the pride of, they're exactly what you want in some students. And, that whole class is a really good classroom vibe in there. But, yeah, it's really taking these skills and that productive struggle and being able to apply it into, different aspects of life. Like, I know these two are going to be successful because of the productive struggle that we see. And we know that productive struggle is not just a computer science thing. It's in everything that you do. So I'm very proud of these students. I'm very proud of the class that we had. And I'm going to pass it back to Mr. Gorman. So.
So just to conclude the present, and you guys feel free to, okay, great. I was going to say, feel free to play with the game so you don't have to look at me, but anyway. So just to contextualize the work for a moment, Ms. Regan is going to talk to you later tonight about the strategic plan, and we are being very thoughtful about the types of teaching and learning that we're doing here at the high school, and I think when she presents that plan, you'll see how this is fitting into a larger vision. Also, community partnerships. Some of what you've seen here tonight is the manifestation of our work with our educational partners. For example, the computer science class is the result of a multiple year grant we received from Project Lead the Way. And then with the English and physics classes, one can see how our partnership with MCIEA has led to development of performance assessments that allow students to show competency and proficiency in multiple ways. Portrait of a graduate, these are skills we want our students to leave high school with, right, at commencement. The Teaching and Learning Lab Council has been developing and refining the portrait of a graduate for some time now. We want our graduates to be able to be innovative, be able to communicate, be able to collaborate effectively with one another. And I guess I should also point out that this work doesn't start at the high school, right? At both the elementary and middle school levels, their curricular is folding in some of these concepts. So we're pretty excited about that because that'll make our jobs easier when the students get to high school. And of course, lastly, our mission statement, right? When I think of our mission statement, I think of some of those key words: engage, challenge, inspire, relevancy. And I hope tonight that these students exemplify to you how we strive to live our mission on a daily basis. So thank you all for your time tonight. Really appreciate having a chance to be here.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for the high school team, Mr. Larson?
Yeah, I just really want to compliment the students. You guys did a great job presenting all of your research and your projects and the games that you've created. Speaking in front of a group like this in high school, I mean, you guys did a great job. Yeah. Be very proud of yourselves. I can't imagine having done that myself in high school. So, and, verifying your sources and finding, making sure that they're good sources and the rest of it. That's something that you can use for the rest of your life. And the same with the hands-on learning. That's a fantastic way, in my opinion, to educate anybody in anything. So thank you very much.
Well, Mr. Domenici?
I don't want to echo too much because I know a lot of us are probably feeling the same way. Great job to everybody. Great job to the students and educators. One of my big takeaways is, when one of our young students came up and talked about having to learn and understand different perspectives, which, comes by way of thinking critically. And this is what we want to do here in our educational community. So it's great to see, the results of that and the fruits of the labor paying off.
Mr. Geddes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the physics students, kind of a funny story. I was walking through the building last week with a couple of my kids. And we happened to go into the science labs, and they saw all of these structures in the labs, and they were so excited to play with them. I was like, nope, please don't touch. But I agree with Mr. Domenici and Mr. Larson. Thank you to the students, to the educators. This is a district-wide effort. And I think also cross-disciplinary education, focusing on student involvement, like those students that tend to be more involved in school tend to be successful. Students that make those interdisciplinary connections tend to be more successful in all of their classes. So that our educators are far more intentional about making those connections now more than ever is a great thing to see. So congratulations to all of you, and thank you for coming tonight and sharing with us.
Mr. Storrs?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things I want to say is, later on today, we're going to be getting a presentation from the administration about the strategic plan. And everything that you guys just showed us and everything we just heard is what that's about. So, what a great prelude into that discussion that we're going to have later. And again, the kids, every one of you did amazing. The number one fear of people is public speaking. So the fact that you guys were able to get up there, be as prepared as you were, and relay what you did, thank you so much. Great job.
Yeah, I would like to say that, one of the things that Mr. Gorman talked about with our students, and Mr. Burns made reference to it too, is, productive struggle. And for our staff, it's been a productive struggle as well. We're blessed with a veteran staff, but as you can tell tonight, and Ms. Faulkner is in the audience as well, Mr. Burns referenced working with her. 3 out of those 4 educators are graduates of Attleboro High School. The fact that our staff has espoused this opportunity to create this type of learning and this type of passion for learning with their students, I think, is really a reflection on how powerful the learning is in this district. So thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. Thank you. Thank you to all the students and staff and families as well. Thanks. Have a good night.
Thank you.
We're going to do a photo op in the parade lobby, okay?
Awesome.
How's my hair look? It's great. Amazing.
I am not showing. Am I really? I'm going to shave it from my hair too. I want the braids. I'm a little bit
So empty.
I know.
We lost all our friends.
All right. Moving on, next to our item on our agenda is our Student Advisory Council around Attleboro update. And for that, I will turn it over to our 2 student representatives.
Good evening. This week's All Around Attleboro segment contains important information regarding the end of January.
This week we're going to start with our SAC shoutout. Congratulations to the boy winter track team ending with a 5-0 record in the Kelly Rex division. And congratulations to the girls winter track team ending with a 2-3 record in the Kelly Rex division. This is the best record since girls entered the Hakama. Lastly, congratulations to Elizabeth Kalish for being chosen as first violin for the Southeast District Music Festival. On to elementary schools. Hill Roberts is having their school council meeting on February 7th at 5:30 p.m. This will be a virtual meeting. Hill Roberts PTO meeting will be held on February 8th at 6:30 p.m. Parents and guardians are welcome to come and get more involved in their students' school community. For the middle schools, Wumstead is having their site council meeting on January 20th at 5:30 p.m. Wumstead is also having their PTO meeting on January 20th at 6:30 p.m. in the school's library. Middle school progress reports come out January 28th and can be viewed through the Aspen portal.
For the high school, the community forum where we will be discussing branding and traditions will be on January 27th at 7 p.m. in the Bray Auditorium. This is in conjunction with Student Council and the Marketing CTE. We will be hearing from the community in regards to the Attleboro High School rebranding. This event requires you to RSVP to attend. Email attleboro@gmail.com. And lastly, Biology MCAS will be happening on February 2nd and the 3rd. Lastly, for community engagement, yearbooks are available for pre-order, and if you'd like to put an ad in for your student, you may do so here. This concludes our segment of All Around Attleboro. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just have one question on the high school community forum. How is, two questions, I guess. How is that information getting out to the public as far as so that they're aware of it? And then,
It was sent out in the blue mail from Mr. Rooney, and then I think it's on, the Facebook pages.
is there a limitation, do you know, as to how many people can attend?
I'm not sure how many exactly, but it just requires you to RSVP.
Okay.
And
It will be in the Bray Auditorium, so
In the Bray.
is
Yeah.
going to have
Okay.
to be safe.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have our superintendent's report. Mr. Sawyer?
Thank you, Chairman Withers. Have a couple updates for you this evening. First, thank you. Just in terms of the viral conditions in the district, as the Sun Chronicle reported this weekend, there was a plunge in our numbers, which is certainly welcome. But, as much as a decrease of over 100 cases in a week is a pretty significant drop. Last year our worst week was 42 cases. So, if you're dropping by more than 100, that's a pretty steep drop. But as I remarked on your update on Friday, we still had 280 cases, which makes that almost seven times worse than that worst week that we had last year. So we have a long way to go before this is a manageable situation. As I've been updating you, for a while there, almost daily, the impact of this many cases, the sheer volume was more than we could really handle. The result was that contact tracing was not feasible under those circumstances. We couldn't do the reflex testing and go through the process of identifying positive cases without having new sets of more positive cases coming out each day that we had to deal with. So, as we communicated to families, just the sheer numbers became unmanageable. Luckily, the state has recognized that. They also admitted what we have suspected for a long time, which is that contact tracing really wasn't all that effective or necessary, and that all that labor that we've been putting in for months and months has limited value, which is why they've offered a new option, which the district has signed up to participate in, which includes at-home rapid testing. So to be clear here, the district is going to continue to do its routine testing and its symptomatic testing. So people who have provided consent will continue to participate in that program. People who wish to join it are still welcome to provide consent and be added to that. But this program is distinct from that and has a completely different sign-up process. So participation in routine testing does not sign you up for the at-home rapid. You have to fill out the paperwork that we posted digitally on Friday and are sending home to families this week. going home in the backpacks within the next day or so. Those have to be returned to us to participate. What's going to happen is that the state is going to ship to us these rapid antigen tests. We're going to get them on a biweekly basis. So 1 week will be for staff, and then the next week will be for students, and then we go back to giving out to staff, and then we get them back out to students the following week. So you get 2 tests in a kit, and so the idea here is that when we hand you the kit, that's your testing for the next 2 weeks. We are asking families to use that on Saturdays. The idea here is that you want to space out when routine testing in the building is going on and when the rapid is going on. And again, they're not connected. There are going to be people who don't participate in routine testing who do participate in the rapid testing. That's fine. We're asking people, everyone who participates at the at-home testing, to do that on Saturdays. The first week that we'll be sending home kits with students is the week of February 7th. And to be able to receive that for that week, families need to send back their forms by the end of this week because we have to order them in advance to get them in time to be able to do the distribution. So this is not a deadline to participate. It's just a deadline to be involved in that first distribution. People who sign up after Friday will participate, but they'll get their first test kit 2 weeks later. The state has committed to do this through April. Not exactly sure the exact date, but sometime in April is when they're going to reevaluate and decide whether or not to continue that. The last date that they're saying that people can sign up for it is the end of March. So we're pretty excited about this because, as I said, by virtue of participating in this, the state is telling us that we no longer need to do contact tracing and we no longer need to do test and stay. Which, quite frankly, that's all our building administrations have been doing for more than a month now. That's just that work all day long. The idea of getting into classrooms or worrying about other concerns have all taken a backseat to the demands for the contact tracing. So the fact that the state's recognizing that they had stopped doing it, quite some time ago because they didn't think it was worthwhile, that they've extended that to schools is welcome. And for people who are concerned about, well, how does that affect our safety? Again, there was little evidence that contact tracing had an impact on the safety of schools. And we're already, especially, in anticipation of the surge that we knew was coming, have taken steps that we're basically treating everybody like they're a close contact anyways. So by, making adjustments in terms of spacing and other things that we're doing, we really are, through it all, doing a pretty decent job of limiting any chance of spread within the district in our schools. And while we have had cases where it could have been a case of spread in a classroom, we have not seen multiple people catching the virus as a result of contact in school. So it's been very, very limited. And we send all the potentials for that to the state for review, and those always come back negative. So I feel pretty strongly that this will be an effective and manageable way to continue to keep the schools safe in the weeks to come. Speaking of which, I should also mention, because we haven't met since the state did it, they did extend the mask requirement through February 28th, as I shared with all of you. I just would make the point that if viral conditions require another extension, I think we have every reason to believe that they will. So the state has continued to move out the deadline, assess at the time. When they look at the conditions, if they feel like it's not safe, they'll do so. And so I think that will happen again. But by extension of that, if they don't, I think that's suggesting that the state's telling us that we can consider to move on. And as I've been saying for some time now, I feel like we should be prepared as a district for that moment when it comes. Because whether it's on February 28th or someday in the future, there will be a time when the message from the officials who we've been following their advice all throughout tell us that it is safe to move on and to reevaluate some of our practices. And we look forward to that because, as we've discussed on many occasions, there's no doubt that
it's a trade-off that what we give up, we give something up to have the safety precautions that we currently have, and that when they're no longer deemed necessary, I think a lot of us look forward to returning back to what we do well and being able to do it without some of these impediments to our best work. So certainly keep you informed as that progresses.
Can I ask a few questions, COVID
Sure.
related? I have a few questions regarding the testing, but I think you asked the question that I came in with about masking, and the extension is basically sounds like it's a wait and see, as if you get any indication that hopefully on the 28th that we can be beyond this, and it sounds like that's a possibility if conditions improve.
I definitely think that that's a possibility.
Okay. Well, let's keep our fingers crossed. Second, on the testing, I just have a couple of questions about the logistics of it. Is it expected that people that sign up for the home testing take it every week, or is it for when they're not feeling well?
They're supposed to take it on Saturday. So the district's supposed to pick a day based on our testing schedule. We picked Saturday. It's in the procedures from the state that we have to identify that day and communicate it. So that's part of why I wanted to include it in my message. It's in the paperwork that that's available. So yes, everyone, you get the 2 tests. You're supposed to take it each Saturday for the 2 weeks, and then you get another test kit with 2 more for the next 2 weeks. And the idea here is that you're doubling the amount of testing that's available to you, right? So we already do routine testing, and participation in that is in the 70s now. So we have a lot of people who are doing that, and then for those people, this is another chance to get a test so that you don't have to go a full week, because as we know, the sort of window from exposure is 5 days. So it's for the people who get tested on a day and then feel like they were exposed that day or the next day, the full waiting of 7 days to your next test kind of leaves us a little bit exposed to the potential of spreading it when you don't know that you have it. So this gives people another chance in the week to do that regular testing, which from our perspective is really the activity that pays the greatest dividend, right? Our testing program is why we think that we haven't seen the kind of spread that some districts have had trouble with. And that's because we're regularly identifying people who have the virus and are removing them from the environment during their infectious period, right? Like it's just common sense that if we're trying to limit the spread, that's the best way to do it. And some of these other activities were not necessarily helping.
And my last question on the testing then is, what is going to happen going forward with a class pool, a pool test that tests positive?
So we continue to do the routine testing. When a pool is tested, it comes back positive. The people in that pool will be reflex tested, and in most cases we find the positive, and that person will quarantine during their infectious period, and then everybody else is free to go on, and they've got that rapid test to have a check later in the week.
Mr. Storrs?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One question and then a statement. The first question is, I know that the general guidelines regarding the duration once a positive has changed. Has that changed for us as well?
Yes, 5 days.
Okay, all right. And then the other one's just a statement that, to think that we've been dealing with this now a year and 10 months or whatever it's been, I think it's very important to say what the central administration, the building administration, teachers, staff, clerical, nurses, especially those nurses.
Absolutely.
I think it's very important to just acknowledge everything that you guys and everything that they've done for the past year and 10 months. I mean, last year was bad enough with the hybrid and everything, and now this year with where we are being full, it's hard for us to truly fathom what the changes are within the schools. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to just say thank you to everybody in the public schools, the staff and everybody, with how much you guys have done. So,
Mr. Geddes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Storrs stole my thunder a little bit with the recognition. It truly is remarkable, all the work, especially that the nurses have done this year, and all of the administrators. A friend of mine that works in another district joked about like contact tracing at school now. That's all it is. That's all he does, which is an unfortunate use of time. 2 questions I did have. So the students that are enrolled in the at-home testing, is it that they take the at-home test and they need to show proof of that coming back negative before they can go back to school?
No, they're supposed to, report to us when they test positive, right? And then they're supposed to, isolate for the 5 days. But there's no requirement to prove that that was the case. It's the honor system.
Okay. And then, have you gotten any indication, because we're somewhat mirroring last year's ebbs and flows with positive cases. Obviously, this year was off the charts compared to last year in terms of positive cases within the community and within the schools. Have you gotten any indication that, and the spike typically followed the holiday breaks. Last year we had the start of a spike right after the February break, and the current mandate ends the day after February break ends. Has there been any indication that they are actually considering extending beyond that 28th, or
just
a
that
wait and
they
see?
would be evaluating the data between here and there and making a decision as they get closer. I do think that the new variant has changed the perspective on things. They were feeling one way about things before mid-November, and then all of a sudden they changed what they were saying pretty dramatically, which is why I started warning everybody as well, because that was the messaging we were receiving. And for the most part, their predictions have been accurate. I think one of the strongest pieces of evidence that they've been using in terms of their forecasting is the wastewater in Boston, and the data there is very, very positive that we should be seeing this decline that we started to see at the tail end of the last reporting period. It seems to be continuing into this one. So if we see another significant drop, I don't know if we'll see 100 again, but another steep drop will be a pretty clear sign that we're on the backside of this. And just as it went from 0 to 100 very, very, very quickly, the modeling that they've experienced, based on the evidence from other places, I think it's going to drop pretty quickly as well. And there's a lot of talk that March might be a different March than we had last year because, with the fact that we now have vaccination levels far in excess of, the number of people who were vaccinated last March. We add to that how many people now have some level of immunity just by virtue of having been sick. There's some hope that we're going to be facing conditions more like June than last March. But that's yet to be seen. And, I think we're in a good place to continue to do what we've done because, to the point that Mr. Storrs made, and I appreciate that, the last couple of weeks have been really, really, really hard. And that the nurses and the administration were able to work with the teachers who have been very, very flexible because it's been very disruptive in the classroom as well, right? Losing your student, students being pulled out of your room to be tested, so many kids absent. It's hard on the teachers too. But I think enough work's been done at the administrative level with the nurses that, for the students who were coming to school continued. And now that that's getting better, I think we have good reason to believe that however long it takes us to get to a place where we can take another step towards normalcy, we can continue to operate and to deliver quality learning experience for students and make progress towards what we're trying to do this year. And we've kept our focus and continued to do good things in spite of how crazy this has been. So we're in that position, but at the same time we are preparing for the opportunity to move away from what we've just been experiencing. And I think there are a lot of people in the district who are ready for when it is safe, and then we've talked about that multiple times. We're not going to do anything until the experts tell us it's safe to do so. But when it's safe, what kids need more than anything is for us to put down as much of this as possible so that we can get back to a world in which the focus is on learning. And we really look forward to that opportunity. We're trying to mentally prepare ourselves to be able to make that pivot very quickly if it happens as fast as, again, some of the models suggest it will.
And I think it was in our December meeting you had mentioned starting to consider this an endemic versus a pandemic, and I'm optimistic that that as this variant flushes through I'm hopeful that any future variants are even less concerning, and we can get to that point. But my only worry is that we start the 1 mile sprint 2 miles away from the finish line with it.
Correct. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I totally agree. But yes, I think you have that exactly right. That we've gotten to a place where I think from the things I read, there's no reason to believe we're ever going to live in a world in which COVID isn't part of it ever again. Right? Like this is now part of our reality. If there was ever a chance to beat this thing, that didn't happen. Historians can talk about whose fault that was. All I know is that we're going to have to adjust to a reality in which this is part of it. But I think a lot of us believe that we're getting to a place where the strategies we were using to try to prevent the spread, they don't seem to work particularly well with Omicron, which is why the case levels are astronomical, and so they have limited value, and so are they really worth what we give up to do them anymore? And I think we're inching towards a place in which we can make that decision as a society to say, okay, we have to do these other things now, because again, it's not going away, so we're not going to put our heads in the sand and pretend like it's not a thing. But for a while there, the schools were one of the prime focuses we made as as a society to try to prevent the spread of this disease. But now that everyone's had it, perhaps it's not appropriate to ask schools to do that anymore.
Mr. Frappier?
Yes, I just had a question. With the cessation of contact tracing, the nurses might have slightly more time. Are we going to resume calling students with positive tests or stick to the email procedure they've been working with?
As soon as we can get down to case levels that are manageable, we would like to go back to personal contact, right? I think families prefer to be able to ask somebody questions, and so yes, but we've got a ways to go. Okay. Another thing that's come out of all of this, I'll remind the committee that it's my professional practice goal to work on district communication systems, and our ability to communicate about these things, I think, helped to reveal that those problems that we've talked about are real. The website, our use of Remind and Aspen, they all have their limitations. And so I just wanted to provide you an update that we are in a process to select new services, and that we have a March 1st target to identify a new vendor, or perhaps renew with the vendor that we have, but with a different level of service, because we need to have a better system in place in which people know what to expect and where to find things. And the website that we have now doesn't support that in a way that I think meets what people's expectations are for 2022. It's antiquated, and we've had problems with Remind, and some questions as to whether or not we're going to continue to use Remind or use a different system. And so once we figure all that out, we're going to be able to put together, I think, a better explanation of what parents can expect from us, and we'll have a better sense of where people can look for things when they need them. And so, I know that for some people, there are concerns about our messaging, and I just wanted to say, acknowledge that, yeah, there are definitely some problems, which is why it's a goal, and something that we hope to have a good solution for you to report all back to you in due time. That said, our preferred method of communication has been of late, and will continue to be until we make a change, Remind. And I believe that most people have worked through whatever issues they had initially with Remind. Again, we pick Remind because email is not an effective way of communicating timely information, right? The number of people who have 10,000 unread emails in their inbox makes it, hard to ensure that people are going to notice this one email and the flood of all the junk mail we all get. And so while we will continue to email things so that people have copies of documents that they've been given, I'm not saying that we're not going to use email, but in terms of getting out a timely message that we can ensure that everybody gets it, Remind is best. And so if anyone at home is still having problems with that, the solution there is to reach out to
the principal's office at your school, and they will help you resolve whatever your issues are, because that is our best way to ensure that people get the message. There's nothing else about that. My final piece of news for you tonight is I want to give you an update on principal vacancies. We are about to head into that time of year. As you well know, the hiring season for administrators is basically February to April break. Not that there aren't quality people that can be hired outside of that window. In fact, there are people who work in this district who fall out of that. But in terms of having the deepest pool available to us to find a good match for a position, this is the time for that. And as part of that preparation, as you well know, we have 2 vacancies in the district that are filled currently with interim people. As I updated you, I've begun the process in both Studley and Wamsutta. Put together a process that involves the participation of staff. We've identified parents through the PTOs, and there's a school committee member able to participate in that as well. So I feel like a good group of stakeholders. I want to acknowledge that when we are looking to fill a vacancy in which we have an interim, right, that the process is a little bit different. We're not going to pretend like there isn't somebody sitting in the seat. And so, there's almost, I would say, an extra step in that process, in that, an assessment of the performance of the person in the role, assuming that that person would be interested in that, in continuing in that role, is part of that process. And where we have a match, where a school feels like the interim is the right choice for them, rather than putting everyone through the paces to do a process when everyone knows what the outcome is going to be, that seems like a waste of time and effort. And more so, it pushes off any implications in terms of where other vacancies turn up as a result of that. So, as quickly as possible, we want to make decisions so that we get as many of the ripples of hiring through the district worked out, so that, again, we have the ability to do the searches for the actual vacancies we have during this window in which, is where you have the most candidates. So I will keep you updated as to how those processes go. And I also wanted to relate to you, which what I told you on Friday, that after 10 years of dedicated service, Ms. Martin has announced that she is retiring from Hyman Fine, and so you can add that to the list of vacancies that we need to address as quickly as possible, and so that process will start almost immediately as well. All right, well, that concludes my report.
Next item on the business agenda, the only other item on the business agenda before we get to our strategic plan update, is a request from the Election Commission. The Election Commission in Attleboro has requested that for the 2022 state elections, that they use, once again, Quello in Ward 1 and Willett for Ward 3. The only other bit of information that came out is that they did indicate that after the new high school is up and running, that they may be looking at possibly requesting the use of the high school for wards 2 and 3, Superintendent Sawyer?
I believe so.
I believe was a potential request, but that's down the road, just something to keep in mind. But again, tonight, what we would be looking for is a motion to approve the Election Commission's request to use Quello for Ward 1 and Willett for Ward 2 for 2022 state elections.
So moved.
Second.
And so the November election is a day off, I believe, correct? Even though it's not a federal or city holiday, a federal or a city election. And so the only potential issue we would have is if there was any primaries in September.
Correct.
Like we had this past year, but it'd be similar to how it was handled in the municipal election this past year. Mr. Storrs?
So just to verify, so if there is a primary, would it be a school closure, or would it be the school is open and we are having the elections simultaneously?
At this time, I think we're treating each primary election as a separate decision. Some of the primaries, the turnout is low enough that we can do both at the same time. We've already done that successfully.
Right, and that's what I'm getting at. This year should be that. This isn't a presidential, this is...
It should be that, but I wouldn't want to say that, and therefore we won't, because if something happens between now and then and we think that the turnout's going to be higher for some reason, I think at whatever moment we decide that that's a concern, that's something that we should bring back to the table and discuss,
Right, so
because
like if all of a sudden-
because it'll really be bad if we get that estimate wrong.
Right, so if all of a sudden there was like a big sheriff battle and then that we expected a lot more people, that would change what we might do.
It could, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Geddes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You started to answer this question with them talking about using the new high school, but and I feel like a broken record every time we get these requests. Are they starting to increase their appetite for using all of their polling location or locating all of their polling stations in the schools, or are they still very hesitant about that possibility?
I don't think they're very hesitant about it. I think that they, in some wards, they're just, they're entrenched in certain locations, and so they're not necessarily in a rush to move from them. But, I hesitate to speak for them, but that's the indication I get. I don't think it's a hesitancy to use any school buildings. I certainly don't get that indication.
No, I don't either.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so the motion's been made and seconded to approve the Election Commission's request to use Coelho for Ward 1 and Willett for Ward 2 for 2022 state elections. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We will relay that to the Election Commission. And next we have the strategic plan update. And for that, I'm going to guess that I'm turning it over to Assistant Superintendent Regan.
Yes, thank you,
All right.
Chairman Withers. So thank you, everyone. This evening has been quite a long time coming, and before we get into talking about some of the details tonight, I did want to take a minute to acknowledge all of the members of the committee that participated in this, and even some that are here with us this evening. So if you could just bear with me, I do want to publicly read aloud the names of the members that participated. So we have educators, community members, and also former students of Attleboro High School. So we have Sarah Barney, Nancy Block, Allison Bono, Rose Brown, Becky Kuchar, Diane Diorio, Joanne DePalma, Scott Domenici, Jason DeVellis, Jennifer Ferry, Andrew Freese, Robert Geddes, Kevin Gorman, Jennifer Grennan, John Hanrahan, Cheryl Harris, Janice Johnston, Thomas Kelly, Nicole Kenyon, Toby Reed, Frank Rich, Barbara Withers, and our two students that have since graduated are LeVar Holness and Niam Duffy. So I'm going to take you back on a bit of a journey of how this all, where it started and how we got to where we are right now. We began in the fall of 2019 reviewing the accomplishments and the objectives that were still in progress for Envisioning 2020. After that, we looked at what some of the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats were, or what people call a SWOT analysis, based upon all of that information that we received from reviewing Envisioning 2020. From there, it led us to determine our three goals needed to be focused around student learning, family and community engagement, and culturally responsive practices. The committee discussed and provided feedback on the structure of the document and the annual planning process for accountability. We've received some feedback on that from Envisioning 2020 and wanted to adjust accordingly. We spent a significant amount of time discussing the mission and the vision and the essential beliefs, and agreed that they needed to remain the cornerstone of our work. And we also recognized that the need for informational documents needed to be created for our families and the community, which you'll see some of the smaller documents there in front of you this evening. So we had a total of 9 meetings, which the last was scheduled on March 3rd, 2020. So we all know what happened just a short 10 days later when we shifted our focus on the pandemic and supporting our students, our families, our educators, and the community with a new way of learning and living. The 3 goals and objectives identified were always present as we move forward through the effects of COVID. They just never left us because they were part of our long-term planning and our vision. And so it was for that reason that we discussed this extensively with the committee and decided that the unofficial implementation of the plan began during one of the most tumultuous times in public education. So, in thinking about the student goals, as I previously mentioned earlier this evening, they were focused on student learning, particularly identifying academic and social-emotional learning experiences as the core elements of that. Goal 2 was focusing on developing reciprocal relationships, meaningful reciprocal relationships with our families and the community. And Goal 3 was focused on recognizing our students' academic strengths, their weaknesses, their background, their socioeconomic status, their identity, their culture, their race, their ethnicity as assets, and ensuring access for all. In thinking about the structure of the plan, you'll see listed in the visual that the 3 goals all have outcomes that have been identified underneath and within each goal. Within Goal 1 and Goal 3, there are specific plans that are either in the process of being written or are almost close to completion, namely the technology plan under Goal 1 and the professional development plan in Goal 3. Those outcomes will then be reviewed by you, the committee, on an annual basis, and annual plans will then be written so that simultaneously there'll be a plan that's being developed and created and a plan that's also being implemented at the same time. Also, within each one of those annual plans, that information will be integrated into the school improvement plans, and so that will continue to advance the goal of the larger strategic plan throughout the buildings. One of the other things that we mentioned earlier and reflecting on some of the feedback we received from Envisioning 2020 is the annual planning process. So this timeline reflects how it'll work each year. So starting in October and November, we'll review the annual plan the 5-year plan each year, identify the annual outcomes and what the implications are for the budget for each one of those, and then have you approve them in December. From there, in January through March, we'll be sharing that information with each of the schools to be included in the school improvement plan, and then present a progress report to you on the plan that's currently being implemented. In April to June, we'll have the approval of the action plans, approval of the school improvement plans, and then finally in September, we'll get to launch that plan that we worked on developing throughout the entire year. In terms of accountability, as I mentioned previously tonight, the committee agreed to maintain the 5-year planning period with the understanding that the district has already been working on goals for the past 2 years, the goals that are identified in the plan. And after this year, we'll follow the process that's identified there with the simultaneously creating and implementing at the same time. And so, this evening we saw that we maintained focus of student learning, student-centered learning through the pandemic. And we weathered and continue to weather quite a significant storm because of the pandemic. But we never lost our focus on our students and our families and the community. And so our North Star, as Mr. Gorman presented and Mr. Rooney tonight, was to continue to engage, challenge, and inspire our students. And so I'd like to close by sharing with you a quote that we also embedded in the actual strategic plan this year, which says, "Fix your course on a star and you'll navigate any storm." And so we look forward to having this plan guide us through the storm and prepare us for the next 5-year plan.
Great. Questions, Mr. Storrs?
Yeah, going through it, a lot of work, very obvious, a lot of work went into this. A lot of the wording that's used throughout isn't really defined, so I do have some questions regarding some of it. So, under the curriculum and instruction outcomes, it indicates the continued development of foundational academic and social emotional elements in our schools will enhance student learning and achievement. Sounds great. Foundational academic, I understand that. Social emotional elements, can you explain what that means in this relation, in this context?
Yep, and so I think it's more about recognizing that social emotional learning doesn't happen down the hall with the adjustment counselor. It doesn't happen in a separate room. It's part of one of the foundational elements that happens every single day, particularly after the pandemic, and is integrated into everything that we do every day. That's
Okay.
what that's.
All right, that definitely makes sense to me. One more if I can. Then in section 1A4 under the same, it says, it's under the same, yes. It says, review, revise, and implement schedules at all levels that include increased time for common planning and vertical alignment. How much time are we currently providing for common planning? And how much are we proposing to change that to?
Right, and so I think this is part of the whole plan is to review first, revise, and if you'll notice in the back, there's like a template for an action plan where we actually look at data, we call all the specific information that's related to each one of those outcomes so that when that information is presented to you, we will get into the specific details about that moving forward. But it's definitely something that as a district, we want to make sure that we take a close look at all of our student schedules and then do what we know is best for our students to provide teachers with time to plan and prepare for the instruction that we know they need.
Can you speak to the current planning time? Like what we're providing the teachers now? Yeah.
So it's different at each level, and so common planning time or daily planning time.
Yeah, the common. I think that spoke to common planning time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So common planning time is particularly maybe about anywhere between 80 and 90 minutes a month.
Okay.
So they meet bi-weekly.
Yep, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Geddes?
Just a general comment. This is the second time I've gotten to participate in the strategic planning document, and each time it's a tremendous honor. And this year it was such an exceptional group of community members, of educators, and I think this final product is very reflective of what the community expects from an educational institution. Even more so than what we came up with 5 years ago, and that's saying something because 5 years ago we were pretty on point as well. And I think that that having lived through this, that previous 5-year plan, I'm excited to see what the district can implement using this as a guiding strategy for the next 5 years. So thank you to the administration for planning it, and thank you to all of those that participated in the discussion and final product. Because to Mr. Storrs' point, literally to the word discussions of how stuff was phrased to make sure that we were really capturing what the intent was a big part of that discussion. So thank you to everyone that participated in it, and thank you for the presentation on it as well.
Thank you.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes, I just wanted to mention I was impressed, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, the quote at the beginning about fixing your course in a star, you'll navigate the storm. And that really resonated with me when I was first reviewing this booklet, when we reflect on the past 2 years with how chaotic the environment has been. And while we're being thrown all this different information, and how do we as a district work our way through this pandemic, and having a strategic plan like this helps us focus and refocus on when the decisions are made, what is the reason behind the decision, and we have our essential beliefs, our mission, our vision that we can lean back on as a reference point for where we're navigating through this. So I just want to say that that was very poignant. I was glad to see it there. And again, I think it just reiterates the importance of having and maintaining the strategic plan. So thank you.
Mr. Domenici.
Thank you. Again, I'll echo my colleagues and being on the committee was an honor. One of the things I just wanted to note that I thought was important, you mentioned 5 years ago, Rob, for the 2020 and how on point things were, but one of the things that became clear when we went through this process of assessing that 5 years was how aggressive it was, and there was a lot in there, and we tried to pack everything in, and sometimes you can bite off a little bit too more than you can chew. So I think this group was very thoughtful about kind of honing in on some key elements and also giving opportunity to reassess year over year, like where are we, and you know, instead of saying here's the big 5-year plan. So we have some guidelines here, but there's a lot of flexibility to you know, to change course if we feel it's needed. So I think there's some additional flexibility in the plan that hopefully will, you know, allow us to be, you know, as thoughtful as we intend to over these next few years.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say to that is that I remember when the last 5-year plan, when the committee considered it, I mean, that was a major change in the district and things we needed to do, and also codifying things that we had been doing. But it was, you know, it was an important and massive change. And I think we probably knew that we were, you know, shooting for the stars, but it was necessary. And I was happy to see in reading this that, you know, it's still incorporating a lot of that in, and it's you know, there's not necessarily that need for massive change. It's taking what we're building towards it and accomplishing and what we've learned and just improving upon that. So I think that was well done.
100% agree. I didn't mean to take
No,
away
yeah, I
from
know.
that plan. It was important to do at that time, and I think that there's still a lot of elements, as you mentioned.
Mr. Larson.
Yeah, obviously, thank everybody involved. It's a great document to have in front of us. I can't even imagine all the hours that went into putting it together. Take a slightly different angle towards it. I think as a presentation about who we are as a community, I mean, there's a lot of language in here that talks about what we feel and, you know, what we hold important and the rest of it. But as I go through it, you know, seeing the pictures of the kids and the students with the different partners within the community, some of the different activities that, you know, we're showcasing, I think presents Attleboro extremely well. You know, obviously, you know, what we say about ourselves is incredibly important too, but then I was just also just looking at this page right here, and I was like, this is our own little Secretary of State building. And I just looked at that and I was sitting there going, we need to get flags. And, you know, like when the State Department, they have all those flags in their window, and it's like, you know, that says something about a community like us, that we are all of these people together, coming together for one goal, and the education of the students. And everybody looks at everything differently, I guess. So,
Mr. Geddes.
Mr. Larson, to your point about what this says about us as a district, someone I know that's a realtor mentioned to me a couple years ago that homes where she was putting the 2020 envisioning brochures sold at much better prices and much quicker than those that
Did
she
we get
was
a cut of
that? But at open houses, she was putting out a lot of material about the schools, especially around our strategic plan, and that is part. We know that the schools are one of the best assets in the city. It feels like sometimes not everybody appreciates that, but that was just you saying that triggered that for me. That she's got another 5 years of solid sales ahead of her with this brochure. So.
Mr. Frappier?
Sure, I just had a question. We have the family plan, the summary for families, the summary for community. Is there a meaningful way that the staff and teachers are being communicated the strategic plan?
Sure, yep. So we were waiting for the final approval from the committee, but this is the actual one-page document for educators in the district.
Thank you.
Mr. Storrs?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, one of the things that I was very, very pleasantly surprised to see was that the mission and the vision remained constant. I mean, I feel what was done all those years ago, so much effort was put into that, that the mission and vision that was come up with at that time, the fact that it stays and that it's not changing just shows how, I don't want to say perfect, but just how much thought and effort went into formulating the specific mission and the specific vision that we're keeping. So I was very happy with that. Obviously, the goals, so much new is involved in the goals and so much work went into that. And again, I commend everybody for that. But I was very happy to see that the mission and vision stayed the same.
And the only other thing I would add is piggybacks a little bit on something Mr. Geddes said before about how carefully all the words were chosen. I want to, it's clear that, a lot of thought went into every word in here. And, I see that especially with, which I think is a crucial goal, which is a culturally responsive education. You first see that and you think of, some stuff we've dealt with a little bit here, but not more nationally. But I love the way that it's written as far as the diversity being the assets of our students, and looking at it that way. And it's really a strength in pushing it forward as opposed to what it easily could have gotten turned into by the public if they had just read buzzwords and not looked into actually what what the goal is and what the plan is with that, which I think is really well thought out and well said. So. Thank you for that. You need a motion, you need approval from the committee on the plan at this point. We're ready for that?
Yes.
All right, then at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the 2020, the new strategic plan navigating toward 2025.
Second.
Could I have a motion first,
So moved.
please? Thank you.
I thought you were making.
No, I was asking for it.
All right.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We should do the minutes as two separate things, this one and this one. Chris can't vote on these two, he wasn't here. And we'll do that one separate with Chris. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, next on our agenda tonight, we have our minutes. We're going to do these in two groups. We'll do the minutes from last term first, and then we'll do the minutes from our January 4th meeting, so Mr. Frappier can join in as well. First, we have minutes from our November 15th, 2021 and December 6th, 2021 meetings. Minutes were circulated with your materials.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or edits? All in favor?
Aye.
And we have minutes from our January 4th, 2022 meeting. The minutes were circulated with the materials.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or edits? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we have a 15-item consent agenda, so I'll do my best to read through these accurately. Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $2,000 from Feel Better Institute LLC for the boys basketball team. Motion to accept a contractual obligation in the amount of $8,453.62 from Smile Pro Portraits, as broken down in the memo dated 12/12/21. Motion to accept a contractual obligation in the amount of $3,665.76, from Life Touch, as broken down in my memo dated January 10th, 2022. Motion to accept a payment in the amount of $5 from Bay State Textiles to Hill Roberts. Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $50 from Looters Environmental, Inc. to Attleboro Public Schools Gifts Donation Line. Motion to accept a contractual obligation in the amount of $99.25 from Planet Aid, Inc. as broken down on the check receipt dated 12/16/2021. Motion to accept the contractual obligation in the amount of $16.25 from Planet Aid, Inc. as broken down on the check receipt dated 12/17/2021. Motion to accept donation in the amount of $50 to the high school gifts donation line. Motion to accept a contractual obligation from Chestnut Hill in the amount of $973 to the Attleboro High School. Motion to accept a contractual obligation from Chestnut Hill in the amount of $567 to the class of 2022. Motion to accept a donation from the Feinstein Foundation in the amount of $23,000 as broken down in my memo dated January 10th, 2022. Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $30 from Backbod Giving Fund on behalf of the Sensata Technologies Foundation, Inc. Motion to accept a check in the amount of $42.80 from Box Tops for Education to Brennan for the December payout. Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $1,636.04 from individual student lunch balances as broken down by the business office spreadsheet dated January 18th, 2022. Motion to accept a donation of dictionaries with an estimated value of $1,080, $2.50 a book from the Attleboro Elks Lodge. One dictionary per each third grade student as part of the dictionary project, whose goal is to provide every third grade student in the country with a dictionary.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And that concludes the consent agenda tonight. We'll move on to subcommittee meetings. Let's start with infrastructure and facilities, and I'll turn it over to the chairperson, who was elected, I believe, was Mr. Domenici. They brought you back for a second term?
They did. They did. Thank you for that. And thank you, Chairman. So we met, we've actually met twice. Most of my update is from December. I will say we did have a special meeting in January with Mike Tyler, where he talked about Rathburn-Willard project. I will save those comments and updates for like the next school committee meeting, because we have a lot of updates to make and there's other committees. But for the December meeting, the new high school, sounds like a broken record, but on schedule, on budget. At this point, most of the windows have been installed, the roof units have been installed, utilities have been put in. I think the gas is now turned on. At the time of the meeting, we were waiting for the inspector. The inspector has since come in. We are getting a preliminary occupancy permit to be issued in June. The permanent occupancy permit will be issued in August. Demolition of the portion of the building containing the pool is going to start on April 1st. That process was explained. This work will take until June, which is necessary to complete the last pieces of the new building, which is so very close to the current one. There is communication to the community that's being planned to talk about the increased truck traffic during that time, during the demolition. Talked about some potential parking issues with the result of the demolition of the old building. And then also, with respect to the high school, the school building committee, of which Mr. Geddes and I are a part of, we did make a motion and vote to approve the funding of purchasing of furniture early than normally planned, so as to avoid any potential increase in costs. So everything continues to move along. Some great shots of the building every time we have a school building committee meeting. So it's just exciting. We're really getting close. Other updates for capital improvements: Hill Roberts and Hyman Fine gym floors. I know it's been quite some time. We do have a project manager hired by the city. It turns out that the research into replacing the floors with wooden floors proved out to be too expensive. So we are once again back to replacing with the Mondo type flooring, which I believe we had all initially agreed was the way to go in the first place. So at the time of our meeting, there was going to be this was going out to bid. So Mark, I don't know if there's been any updates from there, but
now we've reviewed the potential material to be used with the city's project manager and architect, and that's kind of where it stands right now.
Okay. Studley Elementary facade was completed. We actually had our meeting at Studley in December, so we get to see that. Willett, there's work on the Willett facade that's been approved by the municipal council. I think at the time we were just waiting for the funding, and we've also received some verbal approval that the city will fund air conditioning at Willett. Other district projects that are going on. Very quickly, the city is committed to funding $500,000 to spend on flooring at Hill Roberts, Hyman Fine, Brennan, and Wamsutta. The city is committed to spending $350,000 in asphalt projects at Hill Roberts, Hyman Fine, Studley, and Thatcher. The train contract has been approved by the city. We should be starting that performance contract soon. So basically, over the next 18 months, the city will spend about $7 million in capital improvement projects in the school district. They also have the solar project update. The project was moved out to April. We had voiced some concerns about starting it in February and March for a variety of reasons. They're going to do the asphalt projects, I think, first, and then the solar projects will start in April. So there's still going to be a time frame by which, you know, classes will be going on. But that's, I mean, we got it at least moved out a couple of months. I actually, as I have a note here, I'm not sure if we were just if it had been decided yet which will come first, the asphalt or the solar panels. That was an open question for us.
We're going to go with the solar panels first.
They're going to do solar panels, okay. Clearance will be about 14 feet once the solar panels are installed, but it turns out that that should be sufficient enough to do those first and then the asphalt project. The city's still trying to figure out how to handle all the economics of the solar projects. They're looking at the best options on whether to take the utility credit or a lease payment, and they're going building by building to make those determinations. All the revenue goes from the city, and I think I previously mentioned in an update that it's over the course of 20 years, it comes out to about $100,000 a year. So, long-term capital improvement projects is another thing that we discussed. The city's looking to take on larger long-term capital improvement projects, including the potential for a new safety complex for fire and police, along with a new senior center. The city has asked the school department to investigate adding elementary schools to this larger scale project. It's perceived the project would be more acceptable if, you know, obviously if everybody, all different groups were engaged. So they wanted to give that opportunity to us. And we did have some discussion about that. It's where our motion comes out. The administration suggested that a feasibility study be completed, an educational feasibility study. So, you know, Jason's group does a great job of letting us know about the capital improvements state of every building, but an educational feasibility would help examine all the facility utilizations and intents going forward. It would encompass all aspects of our buildings and facilities to see what they can do and what we need to move forward. So the motion that came out that we approved in our subcommittee was to have the administration solicit proposals for an educational feasibility study of our current buildings. Not to actually do the study, but to price it out, to get some information on it. So that's what Mark had asked for, and that's what we had voted out. So at this point in time, I will entertain a motion I will make a motion to send, to ask the administration to solicit proposals for an educational feasibility study of our current buildings and facilities.
Second.
Okay. Again, before asking for the vote, this is simply to get, to solicit costs and proposals, not to actually go forward.
Just to clarify, because I was in discussions with the administration about this issue before as well. We had previously done a internal feasibility on grade spanning in schools, and it was determined that with the current setup, it wasn't feasible to do the changes that I think a lot of people thought might have made sense, like moving 5th grade to elementary school and whatnot. So the idea here is that if the city is, the city is looking into long-term capital improvements, capital projects. If they're going to be doing major projects and the schools could potentially get involved in that as well, what would a optimal educational system look like here if buildings weren't an obstacle? Correct? That's what the proposal is going to would be looking for.
And what the buildings would look like.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and we thought that would, the timing of the new 5-year plan, it kind of made sense to reassess that. Mr. Storrs?
I guess I'm a little confused. We have 5 elementary schools as it stands right now. We know that at least 2 of them are open classroom kind of concepts. So what we're really talking about is if we ever wanted to do the 5th grade down in the elementary, we probably need another school, is what we're talking about here. Or we need expansion of the existing school.
So
because there's no current room. Hill Roberts,
sure, but
Hyman Fine, et
our
cetera.
2 oldest buildings, once we move out of this one, will be Hill Roberts and Hyman Fine.
Right,
and
exactly.
Perhaps with this kind of planning in place, we can make the case for a renovation of those buildings that expands them, gets rid of the open concept, and allows us to make this move.
And we'd be able to do that over a summer. Because Mark's saying no, we wouldn't. Because obviously there would be concerns of how we would provide an education during school year.
Jim, what, the ones I have seen would take into account the city's demographics, population growing, shrinking, is it kids, is it? So that whole demographic picture would be drawn for us. Our current buildings, what their state is in terms of viability as an educational building.
Yep.
And then
Student population, et cetera.
and then discussing, listen, as the superintendent just said, you know, that's probably not configured right now is the best way to go. These folks would do something like, hey, listen, if you did want to do that reno, it's sort of in this neighborhood right now in terms of cost. If you didn't want to do that reno, this building would do it, and this is what this would cost.
Do you foresee that this proposal would not just talk about the existing building and changes within the building, but also possibly expansion?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, if the demographics call for that.
Right, which I think they would.
The goal is to take an assessment of what we have, look at our strategic plan, what we think education needs to be in these buildings, and get a result as to what path forward it could be. It's all it is to give us a look at you know.
But we don't believe that would indicate a new building. Going to 6 elementaries, probably not. It'd probably be
probably
living.
not 6 elementaries, maybe 4 with the new building.
I'm sorry?
It may be 4 with the new building.
4 elementary with a new building. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
I guess I'll wait for the plan.
Yeah.
The plan after we move into the new building is to get rid of Finberg, Briggs Corner, and we've already been trying to get rid of the old high school on County Street.
That's a requirement of the bonding, yeah. They have to be sold.
Okay, so they would not be included in this feasibility study at all? Perfect, thank you.
Mr. Frappia.
And if we're talking about the potential, about the 5th grade moving, are we going to include the middle schools in this assessment or solely just the elementary schools in this requested assessment?
This was a educational assessment of all buildings, not the new high school.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question though. Mr. Larson.
Just as a reminder to for as much as I'd love to see 2 of those schools get renovated, I mean, the amount of concrete in them, yeah, interesting, sure. When we initially thought about this building versus a new building, the cost of renovating this building was more than building a brand new building by $10 to $20 million. So I think we just kind of need to go into that with our eyes open that, you know, the idea of trying to bring 1975 up to code in one big piece of concrete, for as much as I love the schools, I think, you know, we need to be realistic about what the study's going to tell us.
Right.
Okay, if there's no more discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
That completes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Domenici. Next, we have Finance and Budget. Mr. Larson?
The Finance and Budget Subcommittee met on January 5th. Ms. Furtado took us through the monthly reports. At this time, the budget is performing relatively well. There's a few concerns in the benefit line items. They're doing a great job in allocating the grant money to all the different line items that can be identified for that money to be used for. Continuing our large concern that we've been speaking about for a few months now is the McKinney-Vento transportation line. This line is going to go extremely high over budget. There is really nothing we can do. It's a mandated expense that we have to provide. City is aware of the issue that's going on, but it has not gotten any better, and it just continues to run wild. And there's really not too much that we can do about it. So we do have one motion coming forward. So I would entertain a motion to approve the creation of a new revenue line within the tuition exchange revolving account for the revenue received from students outside of the district attending the Attleboro Community Academy.
So moved. Second.
And Mr. Todd, I'm just going to ask you to just give us a brief update as to why we need this, please.
Sure. So the district established a tuition revolving fund for tuitions received for special needs programs. ACA is not a special needs program, so by the charter of the revolving fund, we can't submit tuition payments in there. However, establishing this new line will allow us to do that. The ACA has been active in letting other neighboring districts know about the services provided, which is an extremely valuable service to any school district, and there's a lot of interest in sending students here. It's
Thank
not
you.
a school choice issue, it's a tuition in issue.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions or concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Last subcommittee meeting report tonight is teaching and learning. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you very much. My report is on the Teaching and Learning Subcommittee meeting that we held on January 11th. We opened up with a review of the new English language education procedures manual. This is going to be a working document or a living document that will be updated as new procedures and policies come to light. It's going to be housed on the website, and it will be available for staff and families to review. What's going to be housed in here will be all the policies, procedures, benchmarks, forms for English language learners, including how they're progressing and criteria for exiting from the program. We always talk about how diverse our community is, and something that we discussed was that we have families who speak up to 43 different languages in our community. And at this time, the elementary report cards are translated 100%, but in Aspen, we only have English or Spanish available at this time. But one of our goals and one of our hopes with Aspen is to have all the report cards and assessments completely translated in the future. We also reviewed the update on the ESSER 3 reopening plan. This reopening plan is a requirement of the application process and has been submitted or was submitted to DESE in mid-October. Included in the plan as info on regarding testing, vaccine clinics, virtual IEP meetings, and any adjustments that were made to our programs due to the COVID pandemic. During the discussion of what was included in this plan, we did have a conversation about what support the nurses in our district are receiving to aid them with all the additional workload due to COVID and contact tracing. And, we really took a moment to pause and discuss what a Herculean effort the nurses have been under with the contact tracing, and just helping manage that workload, and wanted to extend again our gratitude to the nurses for all their work in keeping the district open and classes running smoothly. So thank you to them. And that concludes my report. Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Next, we have open forum. Is there anyone who would like to address the committee tonight at open forum? All right, I will close open forum, and we're going to have an executive session tonight. So the Attleboro School Committee will convene in an executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Sections 21A, 2, and 3, to discuss strategy with respect to negotiations with non-union personnel and to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the school committee. The school committee will not return to open session. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Domenici?
Yes.
Ms. Porto?
Yes.
Mr. Storrs?
Yes.
Mr. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Withers, yes. Mr. Geddes?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Frappier?
Yes.
All right. We will take, that was everyone, right? Yep. We will take 2 minutes and reconvene in executive session.